Howdy, we are moving on to chapter 13. Let me give you a preview ahead. 13 and 14 are pretty important. Intrusion detection systems and network security, and system hardening and baselines. Chapter 15 is on types of attacks and malicious software, also important. 16 and 17 are light chapters. So we're not going to worry so much about them. We're going to take it easy as we're going the syllabus into our second half. I want to be sure everybody is up with us. So remember, if you have a problem, email me. I'm not getting enough emails. And also, we will be setting up another video chat for Sunday. So let's start with chapter 13 and talk about intrusion detection systems and network security. The way you can think about this is, if you could see my hands, I would be clasping my fingers together from my left hand and my right hand to create like a ring, and think about how the house is guarded by a fence, and the fence is like the firewall. And yes, sometimes the analogy breaks down because there can be, different levels, multiple firewalls. There can be one on your router and everything. But I want you to understand the difference between that firewall and an intrusion detection system. But a firewall, we know statistically, does not keep out all malware. It's a good thing to have in defense in depth, but it doesn't keep everything out. So we also use intrusion detection systems, and these can be either on the computer, on the host, or on the network, and that's exactly what they do. They detect intrusions. Did somebody come through that fence to get in the house? All right, so how am I going to look for an intrusion? I'm going to look for either a known signature pattern of something bad, or I'm going to look for an anomalous behavior. So I either have a database of signatures. If this matches up, this is bad, we've seen it before, or we've never seen this before, but let's say some IO metric, or CPU usage, or data exfiltration, or something's out of whack here. Something's not normal. All right, so here's our learning objectives. I want you to apply the appropriate network tools and determine the use of tools to facilitate network security, and apply host-based security applications. And again, as I talk you through the chapter, I will emphasize what I need you to know. Let's go through the definitions. I've marked out those that I don't think is that important. So anomaly detection model is an intrusion detection system where the intrusion detection system must know what normal behavior is, either on the host or the network. All right, so think about it. An anomaly detection, I kind of have to know what normal is. If something should happen at a certain rate, let's say of 10 per hour, and it's 1,000 per hour, that's anomalous behavior. If logins occur on a spectrum of certain times, but then logins or something similar are occurring during out-of-scope work hours at a large number, something like that, something that you just want to scratch your head and say, what's going on with this, okay? So anomaly, once the normal behavior is established, which you'll see in chapter 14, the intrusion detection system can then go to work identifying deviations from the norm, which are further scrutinized to determine whether or not that activity is malicious, okay? Banner grabbing. It's a technique used to gather information from a service that publicizes information via a banner. Well, gee, that's a great definition. When you get on a website and there's a banner and it gives you certain information and this and that, that's what it's talking about. Now, the next two are important to understand both by themselves and to compare and contrast. Content-based signatures that are designed to examine the content of such things in this network packets or log entries. So content's going to be looking at the granular level of the data. Let's check that network packet. Let's check those log entries. Let's look at the data. These are easy to build, and they look for simple things such as, certain strings of characters or a flag set, as opposed to context-based signatures, which are designed to match large patterns of activity and examine how certain types of activity fit into the other activities going on around them. So think of this. Content-based, we're looking at the packets. So we look at packet A, we look at packet B, we look at packet C, we look at packet D. But in context, we're looking at A, B, C, D, okay? We're looking at B maybe within the pattern of what came before it and what came after it. So we're stepping back and taking less of a granular approach. So basically, we're answering the question, how does this event compare to other events that have already happened or might happen in the future? And content-based signatures are more difficult to analyze, take more resources to match, because you have so much that you have to remember the past events as opposed to just looking at the packet. Both, however, are very important. A digital sandbox is isolating a program and its supporting elements from the common operating system functions. So basically, you can play with it. Hey, I've got this piece of software. Why don't I just throw it up on the enterprise system and have it completely bring the system down and be told I've got 15 minutes to pack up my desk, right? No, we want to check it out in the digital sandbox. We want to be able to see, is it as secure as we think it is? Is it as robust as we think it is? Is there unintended consequences? Does it have conflicts, interoperability with other systems? So a digital sandbox is just that. Let's play with it and let's check it out before we implement it into the real world. False negatives are when a system makes an error, but it misses reporting the existence of something bad, okay? It's something should have been detected, but it lets it go through. False positives, on the other hand, it's where it incorrectly reports something that's not there, okay? It says, hey, your intrusion detection system identifies some benign traffic as being hostile, or an antivirus program says there's an existing of a virus when it's not really there, and a biometric system that allows access to an unauthorized individual. So it gives you a false positive. When we talk about these, we talk about honeypots and honey nets. Honeypot, let's define that one first, is a computer system or portion of a network that has been set up to attract potential intruders in the hope that they will leave the other systems alone. So I'm going to make something like a bait car on my network. I'm going to make something called a honeypot. Hey, here it is. Look, it's flowing with good intellectual property information or personal identifying information. Hello, come see me, right? When in fact, there's nothing there of value. The reason you create a honeypot is when it's under attack, then you can get an indication of unauthorized activity, and it is a method to spot attacks. Now, we're not going to talk about it in this class, but if you're into this, you might want to keep up on hacking back, and you can see me for some resources. Some people call it hacking back. Another word for it is active defense. But part of that people don't like hacking back where we attack others. Well, that's not fair to the attackers or whatever. But one argument is, hey, but what about honeypots? We've used honeypots for years. And honey nets is just a network version of a honeypot, or a set of honeypots network together. So now we're going to talk about HIDs, IDS, and NIDS, okay? HIDs is a host-based intrusion detection system. It's on the computer. It looks for computer intrusions by monitoring activity on the individual PCs or servers, okay? Of course, these are in alphabetical order, so, a little bit out of the way we should introduce these terms, but the basic definition for an intrusion detection system is a system to identify suspicious, malicious, or undesirable activity that indicates some kind of breach in computer security. And remember my analogy of the house. I've got the fence up, I got the guard dogs, I've got this and the other. The intrusion detection system sits inside, and it's still looking for bad things. Okay. See if I can get down one. Then we talk about an intrusion prevention system. So it also identifies suspicious, malicious, or undesired activity. The other was detection, that indicates a breach in computer security and responds automatically without human interaction. So the intrusion prevention system it bats it away. Hey, we don't want you in here. Kind of like the firewall. Hey, you don't belong in here, you don't get access. The misuse detection model is an IDS model where the IDS looks for suspicious activity or activity that violates specific policies and then reacts as it has been programmed to do. And this can be an alarm, an email, a router reconfiguration, a TCP reset message, any of those. Where am I? Let's see. Network tab. It's a connection to a network that allows sampling, duplication, and collection of traffic. So it's going to collect that traffic as the traffic moves on. So it can be checking that traffic. The NIDS, or the network-based intrusion detection system, is a system for examining network traffic to identify suspicious, malicious, or undesirable behavior, different than the one on the host. This is looking back at all the network traffic. So it's not on the PCs or the servers. It's going through the network traffic and during transmission, communication, and the like. Perimeter security is, think of that, this is my fence. It's a technique of operating computer security. You might think of it as a castle or a military base where you can only get in through certain points with a sentry. It's the idea being that if you can restrict and control access at the perimeter, you don't have to worry as much about activity inside the organization. You still have to worry about it. It's part of your defense in depth. Port mirroring is a technique where a mirrored port will see all traffic passing through the switch or through a specific VLAN, or all the traffic passing through other specific switch ports. So it's essentially copied or mirrored to a specific port, which can then support a protocol analyzer. And a protocol analyzer is a tool used by network security personnel to identify packets and header information during network transit. The primary use is in troubleshooting network communication issues. Think about how packets flow across a network. Sender to receiver, computer to computer, has to go through that computer system, all of that infrastructure out through the wild internet, back into the recipients, all of their infrastructure and the like. The packets don't go as one huge, humongous, here's your file in one piece. It's split into packets. So the packets have to be reassembled. They have to have their integrity checked. They have to know what order they're in, get them in the right order. Signature database is a collection of activity patterns that have already been identified and categorized, and that typically indicates suspicious or malicious activity. Snort, I love this one. Snort is a de facto standard IDS engine created first in 1998. It's got a large database. It sets a standard for many IDS elements, including rule sets, formats. Snort rules are a list of activities that Snort will alert on and provide the flexible power behind that IDS platform. The rule sets are updated by a large active community, by the company that's behind them. They're available to subscribers. I believe there's even a free use of a limited Snort tool. Anyway, after the rules are available to subscribers, provide elements in the same protection, and then these rules are moved to the open one, the open source one, after 30 days. Next one we need to talk about is, let's click user interface and reporting. Interfaces with the human element, providing alerts when appropriate and giving the user a means to interact with and operate the IDS. So it's your UI, your user interface. Okay. All right, so let's start. An intrusion detection system, it's a security system that detects inappropriate or malicious behavior on a computer or network. It's part of the layered network security. It's different than firewall protection. And quite frankly, it's one of the more complicated and interesting types of network data security devices, or IDS. There's a lot of active research still going on in improving this. So the main purpose is to identify suspicious or malicious activity, note that activity somehow deviates from normal behavior, catalog and classify the activity, and if possible, respond to the activity. So you don't need to know the history, but I left it in here. Early 1970s, it's in your book too. Came from the government, of course, as part of security. I know for you guys it's probably like the dinosaur age, but people who have worked on this for a while always like to go back through the history. So these are the slides if you want to go back through the history of it. Now this leaves us off in 2009, but only because of the different types of changes, of course, we've seen, and we could continue on. Frankly, I like to tell people I'm in a field that, I'm obsolete and out of touch just by sleeping, because I get up the next morning and the world has changed. Okay, so IDSs are typically in two main categories, the host-based and the network-based. Host-based is what I said earlier. It's an individual system. It's a PC or it's a server. The network-based is the network itself. It looks into the network traffic, crossing the network, linking how it's monitoring. Typically has no idea what's happening on the individual systems. It's looking at the bigger picture. And whether it's a network or host-based, an IDS typically are these types of components. they're logical and software based. This is not physical components, and they vary slightly from vendor to vendor. But basically, you have a signature database, you have network traffic. Your network traffic is collected. You have log files coming in, you have critical files, you take it to an analysis engine. Do you need to set an alarm? Do you need to do something on the user interface? How do you need to report? And IDS has following logical components. So the traffic collector, just what I said, collects activity and events. Analysis examines it for known patterns of suspicious or malicious activity. The signature is what it's compared against. And the user interface and reporting interfaces with the human element and provides some kind of alerts when appropriate. Let's go back 1 minute to see this again. Make sure you've got it. Remember, these are software. This isn't a hardware diagram. You're going to collect the traffic, you're going to analyze it, you're going to decide if you need an alarm. If so, you're going to notify the user. And they're classified by anomaly or misuse. An anomaly is more complicated because it knows the normal behavior that the host or network being protected is. You have to establish that normal behavior. Then the IDS has to go to work identifying deviations from the norm. You have to be careful. This is where you get your false positives or your false negatives coming out. So it must be capable and flexible enough to account for things such as new systems, new users, mover of information systems, and other factors. But at the same time, be sensitive to somebody, switching from one account to another at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning or something like that. So it's a challenging task. Anomaly detection is the most complicated because it identifies normal behavior and it allows the system to deal with variations in traffic, and it's not restricted to a specific signature set. So again, you have to know what is normal and how do you define the boundaries of what the anomalous behavior is going to be. Now, of course, you can think through this. Typically, it's just like any other normal behavior. You have the definitely normal, definitely not normal, and then you have that big gray area in between that, we're not sure. Okay, so the misuse detection model is simpler to implement. It's more popular. It looks for suspicious activity that violates specific policies and then reacts as it's been programmed to do. It's more efficient, it's cheaper, it's easier. It relies on a predefined signature base, which is the drawback of the model. And it's got its place, but it's not as good as an anomaly detector because a good anomaly detection system over time will learn. Okay, the misuse detection model is more static. The intrusion detection system based on anomalous behavior over time will learn the behavior of that system and will be able to more finely tune for detecting anomalies. So there's 4 categories describing how the IDS operates and detects malicious traffic. Its behavior is based on a collected set of normal behavior. Signature-based relies on a predefined set of patterns. It's anomaly-based, or it's heuristics using AI to detect intrusions and malicious traffic. Okay? So let's go through. The behavior is based on normal behavior that should happen on the network and is considered normal. The signature is a predefined set of patterns. So that behavior, the IDS has to know which behavior is considered bad ahead of time. The anomaly is essentially the same as behavior-based. It's taught what normal traffic looks like and then looks for deviations to those. And the heuristics uses AI to detect intrusions and malicious traffic. It's typically implemented through some sort of algorithms that, even though they're based on heuristics, tend to give you the same traffic pattern, okay? So if you're trying to figure out if an IDS, if a traffic pattern is malicious or not, if it's something like it creates, 10 or more repeating characters, may be considered bad, whatever the heuristics are. If 10 are bad, 11 are still bad, 10 are worse. It's this fuzzy logic, but 8 or 9, 3 or 5, whatever. So heuristics are based on rules. The way I think of them, even if you're doing machine learning and the like, think of it as a rule-based system trying to figure out what the rules are. And we've talked about signatures, and what we mean is One of the most critical elements of any good IDS is a signature database. How do you find the patterns that the IDS uses to determine whether or not activity is potentially hostile? And you basically have a profile, you run it through some kind of statistical analysis and come back and say, nope, good, nope, bad, whatever. It can be simple or remarkably complicated. They can be divided into two main groups that we've talked about when we do our definitions: content-based and context-based. And again, let's go back over that. Contact-based are generally simple. They examine content network patterns or log entries. They're easy to build and look for simple things such as a certain string of characters or a certain flag set, something in the content, back it up. Context, generally complicated, designed to match large patterns of activity and examine how certain types of activity fit into other activities going on around them. This is the end of the first video for Chapter 13. 3 more to follow. Stay with me.